This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. The holidays are over, the decorations are down, and suddenly everything feels a little empty. It's normal to feel the winter blues after the holiday excitement. January, February, and March are by far my least favorite months of the year. It's cold and dark, and I have to get some extra vitamin D on board. I also need to keep my regular scheduled appointments with my therapist. So if you're feeling that post-holiday funk, I definitely suggest you checking out BetterHelp because maybe it's time to talk. You might also be one of those people like me who makes New Year's resolutions and you get super motivated. So maybe you need someone behind you to hold you accountable and come up with a plan to meet your goals. BetterHelp is super convenient, totally online. You have a therapist right at your fingertips whenever you need them. So head over to betterhelp.com/wifeofcrime1 to get 10% off your first month. That's betterhelp.com/wifeofcrime1 for 10% off your first month.
Don't miss out on the last few weeks of football action with Prize Picks, the best place to win cash while watching the playoffs. The app is simple. Pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 1,000 times your cash. Download the Prize Picks Daily Fantasy Sports app today and use code Spotify and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code Spotify on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks. Run your game. Must be present in certain states. Visit prizepicks.com for restrictions and details.
This week's episode is sponsored by HydroJug. HydroJug is a 64-ounce water bottle that is leak-proof, dishwasher safe, and environmentally friendly because you reuse it. I've been taking it to work this last month, and I love it because it has a carrying strap that I just put right over my shoulder like a purse. And I'm running around the ER like a mad woman, so I just keep it right next to my computer. And every time I go to chart on my patients, I take a sip, and I stay hydrated all day long.
You can also add on a neoprene sleeve, which I know I said that wrong, but you know that's a sleeve that keeps your water cool all day, and it has pockets in there so you can put your cheddar and your ID when you take it to the gym so you're ready for anything.
There are 40 different color combinations between the bottle and the sleeve, so there's a lot of different options for you. Head over to thehydrojug.com and use promo code CRIME to get 10% off.
This podcast is an unscripted, unedited conversation about true crime. We take the cases very seriously, but I don't take myself seriously at all, and neither should you. Welcome to Wife of Crime.
So Russ, it's now officially spooky season, and there's one true crime case that always comes up around this time of year. In my opinion, there's nothing creepier than an old murder story. This case is especially brutal, but could a small church-going woman actually commit this crime? Or was it someone else? This is the case of Lizzie Borden. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Wife of Crime, a true crime podcast where I tell my husband Russ true crime stories and he reacts to them.
What's up, guys?
This is Jess, and that's Russ, and we're here for another week. I feel like it's been a while, don't you?
Yeah, because we recorded our last episode like a week and a half early, which we never do. We normally record it like the day of or the day before. Then Jess is stressing out like, oh my God, I have so much to do and work and I got to edit the podcast. And
we're like king and queen of last minute with this podcast. But last time we recorded so early, I had a whole week to prepare. We were nice and prepared. And I feel like it's been 5 months since we recorded an episode.
Yeah, well, we only did it early that time because if we didn't do it early, it just wasn't going to get done because I was at work in D.C. for 2 weeks.
True. He just got back. Russ was out of town for 2 weeks. He left me and the pups here, but now he's back at home. We missed him.
I missed Biggie.
Oh, come on. You're so full of it.
DC is whack. I hate it there.
He really didn't like it, and I love DC. I grew up in Baltimore, and I love DC.
All it is walking around to wait on a line to get into a museum where you read. There's a picture with words on the picture that you read.
He is so. You're such a you always find the negative in everything.
That's not true. I just see the real, and I say the real. I'm not trying to.
You're not trying to make anything sound nicer than what it is.
No, I'm trying to see things exactly for what they are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, you're back to New York shitty.
It's not funny. Put some respect on New York.
No, you always say New York shitty. You know how New York is.
New York's all right.
It can be a little shitty. So, anyway, we're back, and it's been a pretty good, last 2 weeks. Some crazy stuff in true crime, again, has happened. Like, they think they've identified the Zodiac killer.
Oh, yeah. There was a good-ass podcast on the Zodiac killer. It had creepy music and everything.
Yeah, but I've heard that, they've done this before with the Zodiac, where they had someone who they thought it was. They even made a documentary about it. But I don't know. I feel like this evidence that they have for this guy, it's like, meh. Like, they don't have DNA evidence.
Oh, because I was going to say, in the words of the late, great Johnny Cochran, who can get anyone off even if they have you on video, if the DNA fits, you can't acquit.
It's true. But they don't have DNA. This is just some dude named Gary, right? And he had scars on his forehead. To me, it looks like wrinkles. I think homie just needed some Botox.
That's what I saw. That someone, might have been Andrew, said, "Oh, the wrinkles on the forehead match. Must be him."
Yeah, it was Andrew. Andrew's one of our friends who listens, and he always has a sarcastic comment, kind of like Russ. But I feel like the Zodiac thing, we'll see how it pans out. But it's still interesting, and just in time for creepy season. But I do hope, honestly, for real though, no joking aside, or all joking aside, I do hope for the victims' families that they eventually find out who did it. It's been so long. People need closure. It sucks not having closure. You don't even like when I tell you cases with no closure.
That's true.
All right. So do you want to go ahead and get into your jobs?
Yeah. So this week I have the review of the week. There are so many good ones that it's really getting challenging. And I'm not even sure if I'm picking the best one. Someone's going to be like, mine was better. And I don't know why I did that Randy March voice. Or I did very South Park. They took my derb. So this one I'm reading this week is from Beth Deanda. I can't read well. So hashtag Russ the spoiler alert 5 stars. I never thought Russ was moldy, but in the first few shows, he seemed like he was just playing along for Jess. But I love hearing his honest reactions to the stories, and he seems excited about the podcast now. Jess is a great storyteller with 2 exclamation points. Russ the profiler is a slippery slope. Russ, spoiler alert, exclamation point, let her finish, LOL. Love the show, haven't listened to anything else in weeks. So that's pretty cool.
That is really good. I like that one. That one was really funny. You're a slippery slope.
And there was a couple other ones that were one sentence that were definitely funny. So I'll read one of them, and there's another one I'll probably save for next week. This one is wow, 5 stars. The way Russ says wow is more iconic than Owen Wilson. Fight me. There's so many other good ones, but I just can't sit here reading them. I read them at home, though.
Yeah, we do read them, and we laugh at them. There's a lot of really funny ones that you guys put up. So thank you so much for all your amazing reviews. We think it helps with our algorithm, but we actually have no idea.
And we have to learn how to say algorithm first. Algorithm.
But it's something that podcast people say, so we just jumped on the train of saying it helps with our algorithm.
Well, I think it's cool because sometimes I'm bored at work and I'm like, oh, let me see if we have any new good reviews. It's kind of cool to see the feedback.
It is. It's really cool. And, I really like hearing reviews or reading the reviews because it helps encourage me, especially all the positive ones. I get really encouraged to do my research and keep the podcast going, keep telling you stories because people really enjoy it. I've gotten so many messages and reviews about wives that listen to true crime and their husbands never liked true crime. And then they started listening to our podcast together because the husbands relate to what Russ is saying. And that's really cool to me. Like, I love that we, play a part in people listening together and bonding. I just love it.
Well, shout out to the husbands that tolerate me, They're probably like, well, if I'm going to be here, I'll just be here with another jerk like me. So this is the time where I do my Patreon shout out. And this week we have a lot. A lot of people probably noticed there are more ads on our shows now.
Yes.
So there are multiple levels on the Patreon. The lowest one will give you ad-free episodes, so you can skip them.
Mm-hmm.
At other levels, like the $5 level, you get bonus episodes, which we do about once a month. We might have about 14, 15 of them there now. Mm-hmm. We do True Crime and Chill, where we review documentaries. And then there are other levels where you get buttons, mugs.
Just magnets and mugs, not buttons.
I always call them buttons. I don't know. It's a refrigerator button. So I'm going to read these. Bear with me. It's long. I appreciate you all. So we got Jane, Leanne, Jessica, Kathy, Kim, Audrey and John, Faye, Anita, Sarah, Sign or Signey, Erin, Ellie, Kyle, Melissa, Jen, Zoe or Zoe, Violet, Carly, Erica, Katie, Mary, Jasmine, Crystal, Elena, Amy and Drew, Jessica, Rhiannon. Rhiannon?
Yes. Rhiannon, like the famous Fleetwood Mac song, Rhiannon.
Never heard of that.
Okay.
Kim, Logan, Angie, Sarah, Melissa, Kira, Kenneth, and Melissa.
Wow, lots of Melissas. Whew. We have a lot of Melissa friends.
Yo, cheers to you guys. I got the red wine today, so it's red wine, Russ. So I'll tap the bottle of something.
People remember that time that someone said red wine Russ was on fire.
Yeah, that was funny.
That was really funny. Well, thank you guys so much for joining the Patreon. This month, for October, because it's spooky season, we're on a spooky theme. We watched a documentary called Demon House, and it's because I put a poll on Patreon and asked our patrons if they wanted Russ to watch something paranormal because he doesn't believe in it. And a majority of them said yes. There were a few no's that they wanted us to stick with true crime, but a bunch of people said yes. So we watched this paranormal documentary.
That was one of the best comedies I've watched in a long time. Like, it wasn't as good as like a Dave Chappelle special, but that thing was funny.
Well, Russ, moral of the story, Russ does not believe in paranormal activity. And in fact, he made fun of and laughed at the documentary the entire time. And him and I disagreed on everything. And it was pretty funny. So, all right. This episode is dedicated to our two youngest listeners. They are two sisters named Olivia and Jovi, who love our show. And they even make videos mimicking us.
They do.
Pretending that they are making a podcast, and one of them plays me and one of them plays Russ, and they like giving each other like sarcastic comments and everything, and it's really funny. And their mom,
and they send us art.
Yeah, their mom send us videos, and they make art for us and send the art. So this is dedicated to them. They requested this case a long time ago, and I promised I would do it. But I wanted to wait for the right time. Well, spooky season is upon us, and this is the perfect time for a case like this. This is the infamous case of Lizzie Borden. Have you ever heard of Lizzie Borden?
I don't know none of this.
You really don't know who Lizzie Borden is? It's like folklore, American folklore.
I thought she was like a person who had like a chef show on one of them channels.
What?
I don't know. That's what I thought that name was.
Lizzie Borden?
Yeah. I thought she was like a celebrity chef.
How?
Borden. Wasn't there like a chef Borden?
Oh, no. The guy. Oh, man. Someone's yelling his name at their speaker right now. Oh, man. I can't think of his name.
I'll look it up.
Boudin.
Oh, yeah. And he committed suicide not too long ago. R.I.P.
Yeah.
I hear he was a good dude. from everything I hear.
Yeah, I heard that too. No, this is Lizzie Borden. This is from the 1800s, and this is like American folklore.
Oh, 1800s?
Yes, this is an old case.
So let me put on my black and white vision in my head. At least now you told me the time.
Well, you must have read what I wrote in my notes because I literally say that a little later. You'll see.
Well, if you're using things that I say, they're going to come out of my mouth.
That's true. So there's something especially creepy to me about an old murder story. And this story, the case of Lizzie Borden, is definitely creepy and has grown to be somewhat of American folklore, like I said. A lot of people know this case. It's wildly popular around this time of year, especially. You can even go to the Lizzie Borden house where the murders happened. It's a bed and breakfast now, and you can stay the night. It's become like a tourist attraction.
And it's probably not even haunted, and some fools are in there saying it's haunted.
I've heard it's really creepy, though. The sources I used for this episode were a bunch of videos and some other podcasts, but one of the sources I used was from BuzzFeed Unsolved. Like, first of all, I love BuzzFeed Unsolved. I think their show is amazing.
Is that what the dude is drunk and he tells his friends some stuff and he doesn't believe it?
Yeah, but he's not drunk.
Oh.
They're not drunk at all.
Well, they're just clowning?
Yeah, they're just funny. They're not drunk at all.
Maybe they're high, or maybe they don't tell you.
Maybe, but their show is great, and they went and did an episode in the Lizzie Borden house because, you know, one of the hosts doesn't believe in anything paranormal, just like you, and the other one does. So they spent the night in the Lizzie Borden house and kind of told the story.
You know what people have in common that believe in ghost and don't believe in ghost? There's
What?
one thing they have in common.
What?
Neither one of them has ever seen a ghost. And one believes it.
Whatever. So they spent the night there, and it looked pretty creepy.
Wait, because did they like turn off the lights and all of a sudden it was a little darker, so it was creepy?
Well, it's just creepy. When you're in a house that murders happened in, and it's old, it's the 1800s, it's creepy. A lot of people know this case. It's very popular. But this is why I love to tell you super popular cases. I have a lot of fun telling you these because it's cool to hear your raw reactions to them because it's, you know, you hearing them for the first time, and it's interesting to hear you hear it for the first time. This is a classic whodunit case, something that Sherlock Holmes would have been trying to solve back in the day.
Well, now what's whack about a case like this is that there's no new evidence that comes up.
No.
So, like, you just have to go off the old newspapers or something.
Well, yeah, I mean, but a lot of historians have looked into this case, and one of my sources also was from the Smithsonian Channel, and they really went deep in this.
But they didn't have science back then, so it was very hard to crack cases.
They didn't have a lot of forensic science, but they did have science, just not forensics.
It was fake science. They didn't even have TVs.
Anyway, so I'm going to tell you the whole case.
Like, maybe they knew that you could use horse poop as fertilizer. That was probably like the extent of their science.
Well, we'll go into all the science they had in this case in particular, and I'll hear your thoughts then.
They didn't even have a flashlight. At nighttime, the case was over.
So I want to set the stage. The year is 1892. So I need you to turn on your black and white TV brain for this episode.
400 years after Columbus sailed the ocean blue.
Yes, 1892. So anyway, turn on your black and white TV brain. Are you ready?
It's on. Ready.
So there's a very famous nursery rhyme, and it goes like this. Lizzie Borden took an axe, gave her mother 40 whacks, and when she saw what she had done, she gave her father 41. Let's just hope she don't find you, or she'll give you 42. This became a popular rhyme.
That could be like a hit in today's rapping because everybody raps like trash.
Well, this became a popular rhyme, and folklore says that it was made by one of the newsies back in the day. The newsies were the little kids who sold newspapers. They were called newsies. There's a Broadway show about it.
They're before their time. They had bars.
Yeah. And this was back in the, 1800s, so they really needed to sell their papers. But the truth is, this rhyme isn't accurate. Lizzie's mother in the rhyme was actually her stepmother. And she was actually struck 18 times. And her father, Andrew Borden, was hit 11 times.
Well, I knew that the numbers were off. Sometimes you fabricate a song. Like, all these rappers didn't sell that much drugs or kill 37 people or have 102 Lambos. So you knew it was just the song. There was no chance that she hit this person 40 times. She made sure she hit the next one 41 times, the next one 42.
Yeah.
So if they believe that, they were even dumber back then.
Well, just like today, the media, they needed to monopolize on this story. It was a huge, sensational case. Because back then, women did not commit heinous crimes like this. It was totally just out of the realm of their possibility. So this case blew up.
So women have gotten much eviler.
Apparently.
Watch your back, fellas.
Lizzie Borden was born July 19th, 1860, in the town of Fall River, Massachusetts, to Andrew and Sarah Borden. Sarah, her mother, actually died shortly after she was born. And then 3 years later, her father married a woman named Abby. And Abby became Lizzie and her sister Emma's stepmother. The two girls were 10 years apart. And, they called their stepmother, Abby, they called her mother. But according to people who knew the family and a lot of, historians that have researched this case, apparently they only did that to please their father. They didn't actually like Abby at all.
A lot of people don't like their step-parents, though. That's tough for a little kid to deal with sometimes.
Yeah, it is. So, they grew up calling her mother, but apparently it was very reluctantly.
Maybe they did it so they could eat food.
So as a child, Lizzie was known to be a bit of a liar. She was also a huge kleptomaniac. She actually stole things from stores in town all the time. The shop owners knew she was doing this, and instead of involving the police or anything, they would just keep track of the things she stole and send her father a bill.
That's funny.
Yeah, Andrew Borden was her father, and he was very wealthy. They were actually a very wealthy family. He was a big real estate investor and owned multiple rental properties. But Andrew was really, really cheap, like super cheap. And he lived way below his means. They lived in an area of town that was just like a working class neighborhood. And even though at the time electricity and plumbing was available for homes, he refused to get it. So the house they lived in had no electricity, no plumbing. They didn't even have a bathroom.
Damn.
Exactly. He was really cheap.
They're just shitting in a hole? Probably.
I don't know. They must have had an outhouse.
I wish I could live below my means. You give me some money. Next thing you know, I'm trying to see how much it is per month for a Lamborghini. I'm the worst.
So since he was really wealthy and everyone knew he was also the president of one of the banks. Since he was really wealthy, the store owners knew he was good for the money. So they would just keep track of everything she stole and send her father a bill.
That's pretty cool, though.
Yeah, they didn't involve police.
But now you got her into the habit of breaking laws and doing things she's not supposed to. Exactly. He probably should have just gave her some money.
Exactly. So, like I said, he was incredibly cheap. And he almost kind of, from how he's described, he sounds like an Ebenezer Scrooge, like from The Christmas Carol.
Yeah, like he had bushy gray sideburns. Yeah,
no, I'm more talking about his personality. He was like a cheap, he was, part of this bank, but he was very cheap. He had a lot of money, but he was also angry and just like a miserable dude. And that's kind of how people describe him. Lizzie and Emma lived with their parents all the way through adulthood. In 1892, when the Bordens were murdered, Lizzie was 32 years old and her sister was 42. The two women were seen as spinsters because back then, if you weren't married by the end of your 20s, like that's it for you.
Oh, it's a wrap.
That's it. You're done.
You're very judgmental.
Well, no, that's just how it was back then.
But didn't people die younger? So you wasted half your life.
Yeah, they did. They did die younger back then. But like if you weren't married in your 20s, then you're done. You're a spinster.
I saved you.
This was back then, and you did not save me.
You could have been a spinster.
Don't even start with me. Another person that lived in the home with the family was their housekeeper. Her name was Bridget Sullivan. Bridget was an Irish immigrant who had been working for the family for a little over 2.5 years. So apparently, I read, and multiple sources said, that Lizzie and Emma would actually call Bridget Maggie. They did this because their old housekeeper's name was Maggie. Isn't that rude?
Yeah.
No, that's rude.
It's rude, but it depends on the context and like how you messing around.
No.
People get nicknames all the time.
No, they just said they didn't want to have to learn this lady's name, so they just called her Maggie. It's disrespectful.
Or maybe it's insensitive. Like, we had this neighbor that lived across from us. Forgot her name. All the neighbors are the same person in my head. There's like a few people that moved in and out over the years, and I confused all the guys with each other too because they wanted to be my friend, but I just forgot their names. They were all the same. But she said whenever her cat dies, she'd get a new cat and just give it the same name.
Oh, yeah,
so
that's
it's like he's always there. That's freaking weird.
That is weird. And it's just weird that these girls, like, it's almost like they couldn't be bothered to learn this poor woman's name because she is less than them. She's their housekeeper. So they called her Maggie, just like their old housekeeper. So automatically I'm like, okay, she's a kleptomaniac. She's a spinster. And she has zero respect for her housekeeper. She already sounds kind of like a bitch to me. Sorry, but she does.
How old is she at this point? Do we know?
32.
Oh, all right. Spinning.
Yeah.
She's spinning and winning. It's from Clyde Frazier, my boy.
She's spinning and winning. That's so funny. Lizzie Borden, spinning and winning. So, yeah, she sounds like a bitch. But does that make her a murderer? I don't know. I'll see what you think.
It could be a bitchy murderer.
True. Now, Lizzie and her father actually had a very close relationship. They loved each other very much. And from all accounts that I've read, they, of course had their arguments and disagreements like every family does. But they really did love each other. And in fact, she bought him this ring. And for, years and years and years, he cherished this ring. He wore it on as a pinky ring on his pinky. And it meant a lot to him. But one thing that they didn't agree on is their stepmother. Lizzie and Emma really didn't like her. But aside from that, they had a great relationship with their father. About a year before the murders, Abby Borden's family fell on hard times. So Andrew Borden gave his wife's family a rental property so they could make some income off of it.
Wow.
Which that was very nice of him.
Man, no one gives me shit.
But this made the girls very upset, to the point that they no longer called her mother. Now they would only refer to her as Mrs. Borden. In the sources I read, people even said that Lizzie stopped eating meals with the family. Like, she refused to have dinner with them, breakfast with them. Like, she didn't want to have anything to do with their stepmother because they were under the impression that now her family is mooching off their father.
That's funny because earlier I said she probably calls her mother so she can eat food. And now she's not eating.
True. So on the morning of August 4th, 1892, it was an incredibly hot day. It was 101 degrees, which is pretty rare for Massachusetts. Andrew Borden comes home at around 10:40 a.m. He comes in his house, takes off his jacket, and he lays on the couch to have a nap in the living room. Meanwhile, on the third floor, Bridget Sullivan, the housekeeper, was laying down because that same week, the whole family was actually feeling really sick with like a stomach bug. She was not feeling well at all, so she decided to lay down for a few minutes. Suddenly, at 11 a.m., she hears a scream from downstairs. "Maggie, come down quick. Father is dead. Someone came in and killed him." Bridget ran down the stairs and found Lizzie standing next to the body of Andrew Borden.
40 whacks.
Andrew was laying on the couch and his face was no longer recognizable. He was hacked to death in the face. Blood was everywhere. He had no facial expressions. I'm going to post the pictures. They have pictures of his dead body.
They had cameras back then?
Yes, they had cameras back then.
Wonder when they had cameras.
They I mean, come on.
Yeah, but cameras were hard to come by, so they show up with like the flash with the gunpowder and the little flat thing.
The big flash thing. Yes. But they have pictures of the bodies, and you can't even see that he has a face. It's whacked in so bad.
Face Off.
So, Jesus.
I like that movie.
So immediately, Bridget ran out of the house to the neighbor who was also a doctor. Another neighbor heard the commotion and came in to comfort Lizzie, but quickly realized Lizzie didn't seem very distraught about this. She didn't really seem to need a lot of comforting. When Bridget and one of the neighbors asked where Mrs. Borden was, Lizzie said, I don't know. I'm not sure. I thought I heard someone come in a little while ago during the commotion. Maybe she's upstairs. Why don't you guys go check upstairs for her? Which I find weird that she would say that.
Well, she lives there, so if she's not downstairs, she's upstairs.
Yeah, but like in the middle of it, why would you say you think you heard... Okay, so imagine you're standing at the couch. Your father is hacked to death in the face. You're standing there and someone says, have you seen Mrs. Borden? And Lizzie goes, I don't know. I think I heard somebody come in the house. Why don't you check upstairs for her? I don't know. Don't you think that sounds weird?
It depends on her tone of voice, whether that's weird or not. And they didn't have tape recorders back then probably, so we won't know.
That's true. So Bridget and the neighbor, Mrs. Churchill, walked up the stairs and peered into the Borden's guest bedroom, where they found the body of Abby Borden. She was also unrecognizable. Her skull was beaten in with, it seems like, some type of object. There was blood everywhere, and she was laying on her stomach. When the coroner arrived, it was determined that Abby Borden had actually been dead for a while longer than Andrew. Her blood was coagulated.
Did you say that right?
I did. Coagulated.
Because anytime you use a W...
There's no W. Okay, what he's referring to is that in multiple episodes, I accidentally said corroborated.
Like Barbara Wawa. Corroborated the story.
Instead of corroborated.
Corroborate even sounds weird to me. It's just a bad word.
But when I listen back to old episodes, I cringe, literally, because I said corroborated instead of corroborated. But
this hasn't allowed Jess to sleep at night. She's called me at work saying, I think I should address that. And I'm like, leave it alone. No one cares.
But here we are addressing it. So,
well, it's funny because you just said, what word?
Coagulate.
Coagulate.
Yeah, but coagulate is...
It's not coagulate?
No, it's spelled C-O-A, coagulate.
Coagulate.
Yes.
I thought it was coag.
Coagulate. Coagulate.
All right, go ahead.
So the blood was... Now you're making me really worried about it. But I say this all the time because that's what we say in the hospital. So the blood was coagulated.
But now does that corroborate the story?
Shut up. So based on her state, the state of the body and the coagulated blood, it's determined that she was actually killed probably around 9 a.m., almost 2 hours before Andrew. This is something to keep in mind.
So Andrew died 2 hours later. So that would be weird that he would just stay downstairs and not go upstairs and see what the commotion is. Because if you're whacking someone in the face...
No, you missed the part where Andrew didn't come home until 10:40.
Oh.
He was not home.
See? Good thing I said that because people in the reviews have said Russell gets lost sometimes and it helps me out too.
So if the timeline is correct, right? She was killed at 9 a.m., and then Andrew came home at 10:40, and then he was killed at 11 a.m.
But did they even have clocks back then, or were they using a sundial?
This is 1800s. Of course they had clocks. Now stop. This is the 1800s.
I don't know what happened back then.
Yes, they had clocks.
Oh.
Last year, Save More Money was the most popular New Year's resolution in America. Clearly, a lot of us feel like our money is slipping through our fingers. Well, I don't know about you, but I'm not the best saver, and I don't know much about investing until I started saving and investing with Acorns. Turns out you don't have to be an expert at all because Acorns will recommend a diversified portfolio that fits you and your money goals. And I always thought that when people say, ooh, I invest in stocks, that they had a ton of money or something. Well, you don't need to be rich. Acorns lets you invest with the spare money you've got right now. You can literally start with $5. And you know you guys are spending that at Starbucks on these fancy lattes. So skip the coffee and invest with Acorns. You don't even need a ton of time. Like you can just sign up and start investing within 5 minutes. Head over to acorns.com/wifeofcrime or download the Acorns app to start saving and investing for your future today. That's acorns.com/wifeofcrime. You guys already know because we have been talking about them for a while now. Via Hemp is by far one of our favorite sponsors we've ever had, okay? We use their products all the time. Maybe you're a little like me. You're a little anxious. You have a hard time settling down. You're kind of wound up a lot. If that's you, Via Hemp products are for you. Check out their website. You will find something that speaks to you. Maybe you're like Russ. You have a hard time sleeping because you have bad nerve pain or chronic pain. Then Via Hemp is for you because their gummies will help you get some quality sleep. Maybe you're looking to have a really good time. Maybe you just really like edibles. You want to laugh. You want to get the munchies. You want to watch a movie and have a really strong belly laugh. Then Via Hemp products are for you, okay? They're literally for everybody. So head over to viahemp.com, promo code wifeofcrime1 to get 15% off your first order. That's VIIAHEMP.com. Wife of Crime #1 for 15% off your first order. So at that point, many people heard a lot of commotion and saw the police. And they all started walking through the crime scene. Like this was huge to people. This was like a big deal. So neighbors just started walking into the house to stare at the dead bodies.
I hate nosy people.
It was like a spectacle.
That's fucked up.
Yeah. Police noted that aside from the actual bodies and blood splatter, there was no sign in either room of a struggle or a break-in or a burglary. It was as if someone who was already in the house had committed the crime, or someone came into the house with the intent of committing this crime. So the initial suspect was a Portuguese day laborer that had done some work for Andrew, and he was owed some money. The man came to collect the money earlier that morning that Andrew owed him, but he told him he needed to come back. Andrew said, I don't have the money on me. You're going to have to come back later and get it. So at first, it seemed like a reasonable suspect. But about one day later, he was totally ruled out as a suspect because he had a rock-solid alibi. And at the time, of course, it's easy to, put this crime on the Portuguese immigrant.
Yeah.
They don't want to think that someone in their community or, the white people could have done it. They wanted to put it on someone that was an easier target.
But at this time, isn't everyone kind of like a first generation immigrant?
No,
well, not everyone, but
no.
It's more likely that your family is only maybe one person removed from being an immigrant family.
Maybe,
you might be the firstborn child in America, because America was only around for 400 years, and they only brought over the Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria. You can't fit that many people in there.
So, because murder was
Hashtag Russ the historian.
Because murder was a way bigger deal back then, it was so hard for people to imagine that someone in their community could commit a crime like this. Police then ruled out Emma Borden, Lizzie's sister, because she was 15 miles away at a dress fitting at the time.
And you know how long it takes you to get 15 miles on a horse?
Yeah, so she was far. And Lizzie's uncle, who was in town visiting, was also ruled out because he was not close to the home at the time either. Police just couldn't believe that a woman could commit this crime. It was way too brutal and too masculine of a crime in their opinion. This is like a crime of passion. You're using a hatchet to beat someone in the face.
The feminists right now are like, we could do anything men can do. Don't say we can't kill
Russ.
anyone.
You're so annoying. Shut up. So as police investigated, they searched the basement of the home and they found a hatchet with the handle removed. This was assumed to be the murder weapon. But at the time, fingerprint technology was in its infancy and not reliable. One thing they did latch onto was something called optography evidence. And this is very interesting. So they believed, right, that you could photograph the dead and that you could see the last image in their eyes that they saw before they died. They really believed this.
So they should have renamed that stupidology.
Well, listen, I'm going to tell you more. So they believed that the eyes of the dead held the key to solving crimes. A famous forensic scientist of the day named Wilhelm Kuhn.
No way he was a forensic scientist.
No, he was.
No forensics.
No, he was one of the pioneers of forensic science. And his name was Wilhelm Kuhn. And he did a series of experiments on animals. And by today's standards, it would be like considered very barbaric. And it's actually kind of sad what he did to these animals. But he was trying to prove that there's an image that imprints on your retina. And when you die, it stays there. So what he would do is he would tie up these animals and have them stare at the same object for hours or days. And then he would decapitate them. And then he would take out their eyes and cut their eyes in half and take pictures of it. And one of the eyeballs actually showed an image of a window that one of the animals was staring at.
I call it shenanigans.
Well, it was eventually debunked. But in this case, however, they did take pictures of the bodies, but the faces were so mutilated that they couldn't even, see that. Couldn't even see the eyes because they were completely mutilated.
I was thinking that, and yeah, so I was like, they probably don't have eyes.
Yeah, they didn't have eyes.
And if those people weren't found in that home, they probably wouldn't even be able to tell who they are because their face was off.
Yeah,
like Nicolas Cage and John Travolta.
Oh, yeah, because it was hard they didn't have a way to ID them. Yeah, definitely. So as the investigation moved forward, Lizzie quickly becomes the prime suspect. She was in the home at the time, but so was Bridget Sullivan. But Bridget was totally freaked out and claimed to be upstairs asleep. Lizzie, on the other hand, was very composed and almost seemed to be unfazed by all of this. She didn't cry, and that made a lot of people feel weird. She also changed her story multiple times, saying first that she was upstairs, then saying she was down in the kitchen, then eventually maintaining her alibi, which was that she was out in the barn eating pears. But
shout out to all the pears. Oh, it's a Rick Ross thing.
Oh, I don't even.
He said he lost weight because he was eating a lot of fruit. And he would say, shout out to the pears.
Oh. But police thought, it's 100 degrees outside. So I highly doubt that you're sitting out in a barn eating pears because the barn was extra hot.
Pre-air condition.
Yeah, pre-air condition. So it was extra hot. So her inconsistency, her lack of emotion really struck a chord with the police. But it was so hard for them to wrap their head around a woman doing this. Especially Lizzie. She was only 5'1". She was small. So it was really hard for them to believe. It took a while for them to actually decide to arrest her. Why is it dumb? Because she's small?
Because if you catch people off guard and you have a weapon, like if someone's laying down and you whack them in the head, doesn't matter your size.
True, yeah. So the Smithsonian Channel has a great episode about this case. I can link it, or I'll update exactly what it's called because I can't remember off the top of my head right now. But it's on YouTube. And they recreated the crime using fake bodies and fake blood because they wanted to try to prove either way, whether if Lizzie could or couldn't do it by recreating this crime.
That's the stupidest thing I ever heard.
Why?
Because just because you can recreate it any way you want. Like, just because you recreate the crime scene doesn't mean you can say who did it or not.
No, they were just trying to see if it's possible for a woman to do this. As far as like the brutality and the strength it would take to whack someone 18 times in the face or 11 times in the head.
Are you crazy? You see these women playing these sports and stuff? This is dumb.
All right, well.
Look at Serena Williams. She'd kill you with a tennis racket.
That's probably true, yeah. Well, the thing was, Lizzie was not covered in blood. Not a drop was seen on her when she yelled for Bridget.
And they didn't have plumbing, so she didn't take a shower.
So did Lizzie have enough time to commit the crimes and then change clothes and wash all the blood off of her?
In a wash bucket.
That's something to think about, though, right? It's not an easy thing to accomplish. Blood, once you get blood on your hands, by the way, it's not easily washed. Like, you can't easily wash it off. It takes a while of scrubbing to get it off.
Was there splatter all over the place?
Yeah. So it would have splattered all over her. Despite all of this, police think she did it. They didn't really, consider how long it would take her to wash it off or anything like that. They're like, no, she figured out a way to get this crime done. So they go and they arrest her.
But if her dad was a cheap dude and he's not paying his contractors and stuff, it could have been someone that came and killed him.
It definitely could.
But then why would have they killed the lady upstairs?
Exactly.
Or maybe they were in the house already, doing whatever they did. They killed the lady first. I wonder if they were rummaging through the stuff and he walks in the door and now you have to finish him too.
Yeah, but it was a 2-hour difference. So would they just sit there for 2 hours waiting for him to come home?
Maybe they went there for him first.
Possibly. No, it's definitely possible. So they arrest Lizzie and she waits for her trial. While waiting, police interview a neighbor and family friend named Alice Russell.
Good name.
She claims that Lizzie had made some really weird comments the night before the murder. She was saying things like, I really need to get out of town. And then she said to Alice, I have this terrible feeling that something bad is going to happen to my family. She also drops a bombshell and claims that the night of the murders, after police left the home, she saw Lizzie burning a dress. This was damning to them.
That could be why she didn't have no blood on her clothes.
Yeah. So they think that now, based on Alice's interview, they think that she changed to a different dress and then later that night burned the dress with the blood on it. 4 months later, a grand jury indicts Lizzie Borden for murder. She's now facing the death penalty. There was a gallows in town, which is a public place where they do hangings.
I was going to ask you, what is that, like a store?
No.
I didn't know what you were talking about.
It's a place where they did public hangings. And that would be where she would meet her fate if she was convicted. So on June 5th, 1893, Lizzie goes on trial.
In a court where they're wearing the white wigs with the curls, probably.
Probably, yeah. There is no physical evidence in this case, only circumstantial evidence. At this point, this becomes a media sensation. The whole country is following the newspapers in this case. It's a huge deal. People stayed online for hours waiting to get into the courtroom to get a seat in the court for the trial. The prosecution claimed Lizzie...
You know why, right?
Why?
You know why they waited so long?
Why?
Because they didn't have TVs.
Yeah, I know.
They had nothing else to do.
Yeah, I know.
Damn
it's a
nosy
big deal.
people. There was like early true crime craze.
Yeah, definitely. So the prosecution claimed Lizzie was guilty because she is the only one who could or would do this. But the defense's job was to create reasonable doubt. That was their whole job. Let's poke holes because they didn't really have anything. There was no evidence in her favor necessarily. So they just had to poke holes in the prosecution's theory. So in the prosecution's opening statement, they really put on a show by bringing the skulls of Andrew and Abby Borden into the courtroom. As soon as Lizzie sees the skulls, she faints. And it just caused a frenzy. She fainted on the ground.
Did they take a
Cameras
picture?
were going off. Reported, everyone was like, it was this huge deal.
I wonder if it was like one of those fake faints, like in the movies when they put their hands on their head and they're like, oh.
Yeah, it could have been. I don't know. But it stirred the courtroom up and it caused...
I wish we could edit that sound I just made.
We need to keep it as a soundbite.
Oh, no, please.
So the thing was, though, the prosecution was like, ooh, let's bring the skulls. This will really get the jury involved, emotional, upset, seeing the skulls because you see how hacked up their skulls were. But it backfired because now
She fainted.
And instead, people start sympathizing with her. And they're like, oh, wow, she fainted. She really cares. And it made her look less like a cold-hearted murderer. By day 6 of the trial, the prosecution was losing. Her police interviews were deemed inadmissible in court because in the days after the trial, her doctor had prescribed her morphine. So, according to the defense, this is why her story changed so much, because she was under the influence of morphine.
They had a lot of stuff back then that I didn't think they had.
I mean, this is 1892. It's almost the 1900s.
Morphine.
Yeah. Morphine was
cameras.
So in the 19th century, morphine was considered a wonder drug. This was like an opioid epidemic of its time. Many people were prescribed morphine, especially women, for, quote, women's issues, which were like period cramping, mood swings, pretty much PMS. They prescribed morphine to women, and a ton of people were addicted.
So when women nagged their husbands, they would just give them morphine?
Shut up. So it was very overprescribed.
I just thought of a new drinking game.
What?
Every time Jess tells me to shut up, you gotta have a drink. It's at least 6 an episode.
We got a bad review one time. Someone said... that I say shut up to you.
No,
we need to be nicer.
It was the other way around. They said, I told you shut up.
Oh, that's
right. It was
right.
like, if my husband talked to me like that, something like she would hit him or beat him or something.
Or end up an episode
of True Crime.
Yeah.
But she obviously was an idiot, so no one paid attention to her.
But we say shut up to each other, but we don't mean it in a mean way. It's just like, oh, shut up. I don't know. We just don't take ourselves that seriously, to be honest.
Yeah, and you can't shut up. If I tell you to shut up when we're doing the podcast, you can't, because then the episode would be over.
It's true. So we don't really mean it.
No, but when this is off and I'm like, Jess, just shut up, then I might mean it.
Anyway, so morphine was really overprescribed at this time, and many people would mix it with alcohol, and that's really dangerous. So
that was like the first scissor.
Yeah. So it was bad back then. Well, anyway, her doctor prescribed her morphine, and so they deemed her interviews with the cops inadmissible because they were like, no, she was under the influence of morphine. She was confused. This is why her story changed.
Mm-hmm.
So now the dress comes up in the court, right? And the defense used her sister on the stand to go against this claim. So her sister Emma takes the stand, and she said that the dress was actually covered in paint. And Emma told Lizzie to burn the dress because it had paint all over it, and it was ruined. Which I don't buy that. I'm sorry.
Yeah, they didn't even have paint back then. All the walls were just wood.
I'm just going to call this episode, they didn't even have blank back then.
Nothing existed.
Nothing existed back then. All right. Now it's time for the verdict. This was hugely suspenseful. It was pandemonium. Everyone's waiting outside, waiting for this verdict. The jury deliberates for less than an hour and returns. Lizzie Borden is found not
innocent.
Guilty.
I knew it.
She starts to cry her eyes out. She throws her arms in the air. The place goes crazy. People are clapping. There are grown men crying. Yeah, people were really polarized by this.
I thought back then men weren't supposed to cry.
People were polarized by this. People either totally thought she was innocent or totally thought she got away with murder. And both sides were very upset. Or not very upset. Both sides were very emotional.
One side was upset.
Yeah, one side was upset, but both sides were very emotional. So the town was split in half, like I said. Many people think she got away with murder. But if Lizzie didn't do it, who did?
There's no way to tell. There's no cameras.
Well, I have a couple theories here.
Okay.
Andrew was a businessman with a lot of money, and he was cheap, and he was an angry old man. So it could be an unknown intruder. But could they have killed Abby and then hid in the house and waited 2 hours before killing Andrew? Is that really a feasible theory?
That's what I said.
I'm not convinced.
Well, my question is, who inherits all his property when he dies?
Ah, here we go. You're right on reading my mind.
I am a profiler. If this is your first episode, hashtag Russ the Profiler, hashtag vote for Russ. I don't know what I want to be in charge of. Probably nothing. I want to be like the Queen of England, where you're just like...
You're just a queen.
You're in charge of collecting money.
You're just like cool and you're a queen. You're the royal family.
Yeah, hashtag
Cool.
King Russ.
So what is Lizzie's motive? Many people believe it was all about money. She was angry at her father. He was controlling and cheap, and they hated their stepmother. The sisters were spinsters, like I said, and they didn't want their stepmother to inherit any of their family's wealth. So if you think about it, if Andrew died, who would be the one who inherited the money? It would be Abby. And then if Abby died, who would inherit that money? Abby's family.
Wait, what?
Yes.
The family would get it, not the children?
No, because this was Abby's money now. She could have her sister inherit it, her family, if she wanted to. So they didn't want their stepmother to inherit their father's wealth. Emma and Lizzie wanted his money, and they didn't want anyone else to have it. Over the years surrounding the murders, the home was very tense. Now, there are some things that have come out later that make Lizzie seem more guilty. Another theory is that Bridget Sullivan, the only other person in the house, well, it was rumored that the two women had a love affair. Could Bridget have been an accomplice to help her get rid of the blood and bloody clothing?
Wait, who's Bridget?
The housekeeper.
Oh, what, Maggie?
Yes, but we don't call her Maggie because that's rude. Her name is Bridget.
Well, that's how I remember her, and it's not rude that that's the way my brain works.
No, but they called her Maggie, but her name is Bridget.
It's only rude coming from them.
Another interesting thing is, that's one theory, that they were lovers. Lizzie and Bridget were lovers.
I call shenanigans. I'm out on that.
And that Bridget helped her.
Because the way you spoke about that being disrespectful, and I'm already out on it.
What do you mean?
That it was disrespectful that she called her Maggie.
So you don't think if she was her lover, she would be disrespectful and call her Maggie?
Nah, she would have called her Boo.
Or Bae.
Bae. Bae died, right? That used to be a thing. You're old. You
Yeah.
say Bae, you say Poppin'.
Yeah, I am old. Yeah, no one says Bae anymore. It's actually lame. I never said Bae. So another interesting thing about this crime that came out a little later after people started really researching it is Andrew's coat. You have to listen and follow this now. Andrew's coat, it was a wool coat, and it was actually rolled up under his head, kind of like a pillow.
So he might have been sleeping.
No,
Someone got him to sleep.
He was asleep. He was taking a nap. I said that.
See, I thought I remembered that, but I didn't want to ask because I was like, wait a minute. The lady was dead upstairs already, and he just stayed on the couch and went to sleep.
Yeah, he took a nap when he came in the house. Yeah. So anyway, his coat was rolled up under his head. So a lot of people theorize that she actually used his coat to cover herself, like maybe put it on backwards so that the blood wouldn't get all over her, hacked him with the hatchet, and then took his coat off and rolled it up and put it under his head like a pillow because there was blood all over it. And if it's under his head, no one would be like, No,
that's fake.
I think it's too much work.
Fake news.
Okay.
Because now you're going to lift up his head, which is mutilated. If she did all this for like money was the motivation, you're going to be kind of you could whack someone, but you're going to be skeeved out to pick up that like crushed skull.
Maybe. So Lizzie went on to live a very lavish lifestyle with her father's money. She traveled the world. She lived in a big house with butlers and drivers.
She had 12 Maggies.
She traveled to New York and became friends with big Broadway stars. And she didn't have her cheap father controlling her money anymore.
Controlling his money?
Well, yeah, but I mean, controlling the only money she had was his money. She eventually died of pneumonia at the age of 62. And that was it.
I was so right. I was like, 30's about half their life.
Yeah.
I was right twice. The food one and...
Yeah, you were.
Wow.
So did Lizzie Borden murder her parents? I think so. But was there enough evidence to convict her? Nope.
Probably like Serial. Like, the dude probably did it.
Wait, Serial podcast?
Yeah.
Oh, you mean Adnan Syed?
No, not like Fruit Loops of Captain Crunch.
I know, but you have to understand that was a random comment until you explained it.
I was thinking, yeah, how like Adnan, I think he's probably guilty, but there's still not enough evidence to probably keep him in jail.
Yeah, and it was the same with her. A lot of people believe she did it, but should she have been convicted? Probably not, because there isn't enough evidence to put her in jail.
And the reason I think that is because if you can convict her for the crimes or other people with such a little bit of evidence, you can put everyone in jail.
Yeah.
Whoever you want, just saying
minimal
something.
Evidence, yeah.
Yeah, like you could say he takes the bus home through this neighborhood. He must have got off the bus, got back on.
Yeah.
Killed, like anything.
Well, that's the case of Lizzie Borden.
I wonder what our girls think of this that wanted us to do it.
Yeah, Jovi and Olivia, send me a message. Tell me what you thought. I hope that you guys liked it. And right now, one of them is actually in the process of making a portrait of Lizzie Borden. She was kind of creepy looking. Like when you look at her pictures, she has some crazy eyes going on. I'll post her picture so you can see it. She's got a little crazy eyes going on. I do probably think she did this, but it's hard to tell. Like the only other thing, in my opinion, that it could have been would be an intruder that maybe Andrew owed them money or something. That's the only other possibility.
It's
really.
either her or he was a cheap dude that didn't pay his workers.
Mm-hmm.
Because he obviously doesn't pay all his workers on time or doesn't care about if his workers get paid on time. Because someone came to collect the money. He didn't even have it on him anyway. Because you would be prepared.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I always like to pay people on time. If you don't pay people on time and you have the money, you're a piece of shit.
Yeah, I totally agree. So that's a old-timey creepy one. That's like one of those stories that would be on the podcast Lore. I love that podcast, by the way. Lore.
Yeah,
this is Lore.
You know what I love?
Andrew Mankey.
I loved the first season of Lore on Amazon.
Yes, so good.
But I didn't like the way they did the second season that much.
No, but the first season of Lore on Amazon Prime, so good. Highly recommend. Go watch it.
Yeah, and then tell him we sent you over there too.
Go listen to Andrew Mankey. That's how he talks the whole time. I love it, though. I love his voice. All right, everybody. We'll have a wonderful week. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Check us out on Instagram at Wife of Crime Pod and Facebook at Wife of Crime, the Crime Family, and Patreon at patreon.com/Wife of Crime Pod. And what am I missing? TikTok. One day I'll learn how to make TikTok videos. You can go follow us, but
we got like 1.5 TikToks up there.
No, I have like 7 or 8, but I don't know what to do. I got to figure it out.
Well, long as you know how to keep telling the stories, that's what they're here for.
That's true. All right. Well, we'll see you in 2 weeks, and we'll have another spooky story for you for really close to Halloween.
And this episode will be out in like a day and a half. We're not super ahead of time this time.
All right, everyone. Have a good week. Bye.
Peace.